assassin. Have you come up with a nickname for him yet?
Not yet. Find me Sunday after the game.
What does he bring to this offense on Sunday?
Well, I think if you look back to the last time he played significant minutes against Cincinnati, he does a really good job of running the zone read. For being a guy that's not super fast, he's got a really good way of running with the football in his hand. He's very savvy. He's got some good quickness, and I think he can bring a different dimension with the way he runs than some other quarterbacks that are more pocket passers.
What do you think is the key to the rhythm that you guys seem to find when he's in there? Is it as simple as he quick release, or what do you?
I guess I haven't broken down the differences really between when he was in there and when Deshaun was in there, so it's hard for me to say. But I think the key to having a rhythm on offense is completing passes and having positive runs. So if you have negative plays, whether it's a tackle for a loss or a sack, and you don't complete passes, a lot of times that's what stops drives and penalties. So those are the things that will stop a drive. And if you just do something as simple as complete passes, even if they're 5 yards or 7 yards, you're just going to keep moving the sticks down the field. It's when you get into a situation where, like I mentioned, incompletions, tackles for loss, sacks, penalties, that's the biggest drive killer that's out there.
Completions are very underrated.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just watched the Houston versus Kansas City game from last week, and everybody's been wanting to get Alex Smith out of the league for a long time, but all he does is complete the ball, and they just keep marching down the field and score. So there's been a lot of great quarterbacks in this league that have just been really good at completing passes, and that's what the West Coast was based on with Montana and Steve Young and going back. Brett Favre, all those guys that were, look at Josh. I mean, if you just complete passes, it gives you a really good opportunity, and it makes it hard on the defense.
Sometimes the obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple game when you break it down.
Texans losing Watt and Merciless.
Mm-hmm.
Was that just a huge blow to them? I mean, obviously, those are two really good guys.
Certainly, they're two outstanding players. I mean, J.J. Watt was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year for a reason, because he's very disruptive. And certainly, when you lose a guy like that, he's not going to be replaced. But they've got a lot of other really good players on that defense. A lot of guys that you don't know their names yet. And they actually went out and signed a couple of really good players in Lamar Houston and Kendall Langford earlier in the week. So even though they did lose two outstanding players, I think they do have a really deep defense, and their scheme's outstanding. So it puts those guys in good positions to make plays.
And obviously, Clowney's a big time.
Yeah, absolutely.
What does he do that really makes him a challenge to watch out for?
Mm-hmm. Well, in some ways, he plays a lot like J.J. Watt does. He's not the two-gapper that's just going to kind of fill his gap and stay there. He's a guy that's going to try to make plays. He'll jump around blocks. He'll kind of do the unexpected thing because he's so athletic that he can make those plays. Even when he leaves his gap, he can make those tackle for loss, make those sacks. He can be that disruptive force that JJ is as well.
Did Watt and Merciless line up together a lot, or could they be anywhere in the box?
Well, they could be anywhere. Those guys, even Clowney, he'll line up all over the field on defense, from outside linebacker to defensive tackle to nose guard to inside linebacker. So a lot of those positions were interchangeable. When you look at some of the film for earlier in the season, they put JJ on every position on that front. They'll put Clowney on every position. They'll put Merciless. And so really, those front seven guys, for the most part, are sort of interchangeable. And depending on matchups, each week you'd see them in different places.
So do all five of you guys have to be ready to see Clowney one-on-one?
Yeah, I think versus a defense like this, 3-4 defense that plays a lot of looks where guys are standing up, you have to prepare to block a lot of different faces. It's not like playing against a 4-3 defense where you're probably going to see the same guy on almost every play. everyone has to kind of prepare for a lot of guys.
Joe, you broke in with Romeo Canal as your head coach.
Yes,
You're still
this is a
studying
fact.
his defenses.
Yeah, even though it's the same coordinator and the same family, they've changed a lot since Romeo was here. When he was here, we played primarily a 3-4 defense with head-up defensive ends, head-up nose guard, and you don't see Houston doing that quite as much anymore. You see more what we call like an under defense, which kind of looks like a 4-3 with the Sam linebacker on the ball. So just little different variations, and I think that's why Romeo is a good coordinator, and he's been a great coordinator for a long time, is because he's willing to adapt and change his defense to his personnel, but also what offenses are trying to take advantage of from a defensive standpoint.
Do you feel like as a line, you guys have kind of found your groove as far as pass blocking, pass protection? I mean, Hugh said.
I don't know. I mean, I think we've been doing a good job, but what we've done in the past doesn't matter. I think we always take it upon us as a challenge to try to go out and block for our quarterback and give him the time he needs to make throws down the field.
I know you're a big fan of Pro Football Focus.
Well, I don't know about that.
You have your
Wait.
line ranked 7th as a unit.
It's all right. All right.
And you're the top-rated left
Well,
tackle.
did I tell you how great they are? It's the best organization in football. No, the one thing I do respect about them is they watch the individual plays. So for anybody, it's hard to grade linemen because you don't always know what they're being coached to do. It's hard to sometimes tell what the scheme was, but at least if you're watching every play and you're watching the players, you're going to be right 90% of the time on did they do their job or did they not.
Especially if they grade you number 1.
Well, yeah, that helps. Definitely, that's a bias on my part for sure.
Garrett obviously returned last week, and I know you talked about this in the preseason. I'm sorry I wasn't here for that. His flexibility and his bend, how rare is what he can do with his contorting his body?
Well, it's unnatural. It's not something I've ever seen before. I've seen guys that can really bend very well, but nobody has ever been close to what Garrett can do. I mean, he can basically run full speed and take a 90-degree turn to his left or his right, and that gives you such an advantage as a defensive end. It's unbelievable. I mean, he can run just as fast turning and arcing as he can running straight ahead, which is something that's pretty rare.
You see a guy come in, has 2 sacks and only 19 snaps that he's on the field. I mean, the fact that he's on your team, you're usually not going to block guys like that. But does that get you excited as a player, knowing that your teammates with someone that just has that type of natural, blue chip, explosive playmaking talent?
Well, it's great having him on my team. Certainly I would hate to have to block him, and it was disappointing losing him early in the season because we saw what he was doing in practice and what he was doing in the preseason. And I mean, the sky's the limit. There's really been, I don't know, since I've been watching the NFL in the 90s, I've never seen a player that plays like he does. I mean, the things he can do, and you saw it. I mean, he hardly played at all. He was playing on one leg, and he had 2 sacks against a team that didn't really hang on to the ball and throw it down the field all that often. I mean, they were kind of dinking and dunking and running the ball. So to be able to get sacks like he did is pretty impressive. But it's not a big surprise from us on the offensive line because we've seen his ability week in and week out.
Hey, Joe, when you early on you mentioned how run blocking takes more synchronization than
Yeah.
pass blocking.
Yeah.
How would you say the run blocking has improved from the first week to where you guys are now?
I'd say it's probably gotten a little better. I think the production helps, and the biggest key last week was just being in the game towards the end. It gives you the opportunity to call some runs in the second half, whereas the few games before that we didn't really have those opportunities because where the score was. And a lot of times you'll see the running game getting better in the second half because you're starting to get a feel for the defense a little bit more. You're getting a feel for your opponent. Your running backs starting to wear those guys out a little bit, and that's when the bigger seams start to open up. So I think the running game it's a funny thing. You can have a couple good runs and it can feel like a great day when maybe you didn't block them up that well. And some games you block them up, but they're just the running back doesn't find the holes, or they do a good job of falling off blocks and keeping it to a minimum of 3 or 4 yard gain, and then the game gets out of hand, and all of a sudden you're throwing it, and by the end of the game you only have 40 or 50 yards rushing, and so it's a difficult thing to sort of rank and score in your head about how you're doing. You really have to break down each individual player and their blocks throughout a whole game, and then kind of compare it as a percentage to the other games.
Get us back to pro football.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's a difficult thing to put your finger on.
How significant is the, I know it's the other side, but we're talking about Garrett, I was thinking about Jamie Collins coming back. Just how significant is that? Is there anything off the top of your head that you can kind of pinpoint that he does that maybe the average fan doesn't realize, like something that makes him special?
I don't pay too close of attention to what our defense does during the season, just because, we're not practicing against them, and then on game day I'm just kind of focusing on myself, so I don't really watch them. But if I had to guess, this is what I would say.
You're great at that.
Jamie is a very athletic big guy, and so his ability to cover tight ends gives them a unique matchup advantage, because they can put him in there, cover a tight end one-on-one, also be in the box in run support. And you don't have to bring a safety down to cover an athletic tight end like a Travis Kelce or somebody like that, where most guys would say, well, our linebackers can't handle him because he's too athletic. But Jamie can keep up with those guys, so it gives you a big schematic matchup advantage where you can play with your safeties a little bit differently. You don't always have to put a safety on a playmaking tight end.
So you are now a linebacker.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Joe, you've given us an incredible amount of detail, like on the personnel and stuff. This is just conversation. Do you ever count up the number of actual hours that go into prepping Sunday during the week?
Well, it's tough to say. I mean, we're here from 7:30 to 8 at night on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday's probably 6-7 hours, and Saturday's probably 4 or 5 hours, and Monday, Tuesday's probably 8 hours total. So whatever that is, add it up.
Do you start on Monday?
Yeah, we'll usually start on Monday. We'll finish the game from Sunday, and then start previewing the opponent. We're starting to get an idea, and then Tuesday's sort of blitz meetings. We start getting together. How are you going to handle their third down blitzes? How are you going to handle their third down packages? And then for me, Wednesday and Thursday are more focused on individual matchups, where I'm watching 3 or 4 different games and trying to get a handle for my individual opponent that I'm going to go against.
I know they're all different. How do you physically feel on Mondays?
Bad. Actually, Tuesday's worse. It's weird because I don't know what it is, but Monday you're sore, but for some reason, as I've gotten older, you get even more sore on Tuesday. I'm not sure why that is, but just the way I feel.
Like can't get out of bed kind of sore?
Well, it hurts to get out of bed. Not fun, but the one thing I do know that is moving actually feels better than laying around and doing nothing. It seems like when you just lay around and do nothing, you just get more sore and more stiff. But if you actually get up and move around, you get in the hot tub, you start swimming, you get a little workout in, you'll feel a little bit better. And to me, that's been a big help in recovery. Is if you feel crappy, don't just sit there and do nothing. Force yourself to go do something. Yeah, if you feel crappy, there you go.
Joe
Yeah,
Thomas, MD.
that's right. Do something.
When you say you feel bad, is it like your back, shoulders, knees?
You name the joint, it hurts. Neck? Oh yeah, everything. I mean, you're just. Right now they feel pretty good, but they've hurt in the past.
You see North Dallas for you?
Not yet. Not yet. Should I watch that one? It was his question.
You might want to wait till you retire.
Okay, perfect.
Do you
Yeah.
own the cryo machine?
Yeah, I actually like the crowd. That's what the cool thing about today's NFL versus when I started. When I started, it was like, here, throw some ice on it. Now it's cryo and moon boots and chiropractor and dry needling and contrast. You've got a lot more options for active recovery. That actually help. Like acupuncture.
You ever heard of some salt water?
That's for like relaxing.
Do they have one here?
They don't, but there's a place in Brea that has one.
You ever use that?
I haven't because it's more of like a relaxing thing than pain management. I haven't, maybe. I haven't used it.
They put all this stuff in. You didn't mention that they should probably add that to the list of all the pools
It'll be in the comment box in the off season.
in the comment box.
Yeah. Yeah.